Welcome to Effective Community Convening, presented by Alignment USA and Nashville Hub, programs of Alignment Nashville in Nashville, Tennessee. My name is Heather Chalice with Alignment Nashville, and in this video, I want to share with you some of our lessons learned from convening school and community stakeholders together to make lasting change for schools, students, and families. These thoughts and concepts are universal to convening around any topic, but most of the examples I will share with you are focused on education. So first, what are we talking about when we use the word convening? Quite simply, we're talking about assembling or bringing together a group of people to meet. We've all been part of this in some form or fashion, serving on a task force or a committee, being part of a group of people asked to come together, most of the time to address an issue, solve a problem, create a solution. And think about experiences you've had being a part of something like this. You didn't all just spontaneously decide to come together and work on something. Someone or some group asked you to participate. There was what we refer to as a convener, someone who is charged with making the work happen, coordinating and bringing a group together and facilitating those conversations. And we primarily do this in person, face to face, listening to each other and sharing with each other and working through issues. But we're also now learning to do this through technology, aren't we? So a lot of the things I'll share with you apply, whether you're meeting face-to-face or virtually, but I'll also share a few tips specifically about making your virtual meetings more successful toward the end of the video. I want to break this down into 3 segments. First, why might we need to bring people together? Second, who might play the role of the convener and who should be at the table? And third, how can we be more effective when we bring people together? I want to start with talking about why, and then next we'll talk about who, because we really can't effectively decide who needs to come together to work on something until we really have a strong understanding of why we need to convene the group. In this segment, I'll talk about some reasons we might need to bring people together, determining if it's a short need or a longer term need. And I'll also talk about the importance of fully understanding your why and a systems change approach that can help you peel back some of those layers to make sure you're really identifying where your need is. There are many reasons to bring people together. Primarily, it's because we've identified an issue that needs to be addressed. I'm sure you can think of times when you needed a solution to something that was impacting multiple parties or departments or your community. And maybe in the past, that solution may have come from 1 or 2 people coming up with solutions that they thought would work for everybody, kind of pushing it from the top down. The truth is, we need more ideas, we need more perspectives, and we need more people working together on solutions so that the solutions aren't one size fits all. Sometimes we really need to align resources, get everyone working in the same direction and putting everything they can into it. And we can more easily align resources when more people are working on things together. It's much easier to be all in with your resources or the resources of your organization when you're part of creating the solution. And really, this is all about making sustainable change. We can always slap a Band-Aid on something and keep moving, but we haven't really worked on solving the problem. It will continue. So let's take the time to work together and come to a long-lasting solution. There are different levels of need when we're talking about convening a group. Sometimes you really do just need to come up with a quick solution, and your timetable is, we needed this yesterday. I think this happens quite often in school district settings or within a large organization. A decision needs to be made. How are we going to proceed with this program this year or something similar to that? So maybe you need to convene a temporary group to tackle that. If you bring all the right stakeholders together, you can schedule a series of a few meetings to address the issue and decide how to move forward and then share out your plan and implement, right? But there are things that really need more time. Convening a group to work on something with an understanding that we're not in this for a quick fix, we're in this for sustainable change, often working on an issue that has been historically difficult to solve or to make progress. And that can be a much bigger undertaking. For example, if we're working on an issue tied to student success or something that's been very difficult for school districts to solve, like increasing high school graduation rates as an example, the factors involved aren't just about what's happening in the school building, right? There are multiple layers in far-reaching issues like this. School culture and what happens in the classroom, certainly, but it's also about things like behavioral and mental health, toxic stress, teen pregnancy and parenthood, hunger, family involvement, supports from the community, and on and on. It's what we refer to as a wicked problem. And it's going to take time and a diverse group of stakeholders and perspectives to tackle it. We didn't get here overnight, and we won't be able to solve it overnight. How can you be sure that you fully understand the problem that you're gathering people to address? Is it really the problem as you currently understand it, or are you actually addressing a symptom of a much larger underlying issue or conditions that may be shifted? I know that we have had past experiences in which we've been asked to convene a group around an issue, and we bring that group together and start those conversations. In those early conversations, you may find that each person coming to the table already has an idea of what they think the solution is. It seems so easy. Why doesn't everyone see it? Why does everyone think this is so hard? But once we started digging in, truly listening to and hearing each other and being open to new understandings, we realized that our initial ideas on how to solve this weren't really going to make much difference in the long term. We needed to really dig into why this problem has persisted and has been difficult to solve. And this is where we like to use a systems change approach. This is a different a definition of systems change that we found that we really like. Shifting the conditions that are holding the problem in place. So we're saying if we want to really create lasting change, we need to understand what conditions are holding that problem in place and then work to shift those conditions. There's a great report that I recommend called The Water of Systems Change from FSG that really digs into these concepts. And I really like the iceberg graphic as a way to think about it. Sometimes we can recognize that there is a problem, but we only easily see the tip of the iceberg, what's above the surface. These are things that are typically easy for most people to see because they're often things that are happening publicly. It may be a policy or a practice that needs to update or shift. Sometimes we just keep doing things the way we've always done them, even when the results are bad. And sometimes we need to reimagine the way that resources are shared or transferred or aligned. Often the way resources are shared or aligned isn't always based on equity or where the highest need is. Maybe we need to look at the connections in our community, address the relationships or the power dynamics that are keeping us in a holding pattern. And notice that we're now below that waterline. Things like relationships and power dynamics aren't easily visible. And lastly, and often the hardest to overcome, are mental models, our mindsets. The mindsets of those around us, the mindsets of those in positions of power who may choose to hold barriers in place or choose to move them out of the way. Mountains can be moved when mindsets are shifted. A great exercise to go through is having your group do a brainstorm. Think about the problem you've been brought together to work on, and then everyone share the reasons they think this is hard to solve. Name all the things that are standing in the way of solving that problem. And then match each of those responses with a category from the iceberg. It's a great way to see where most of your barriers lie and to start thinking about how to work on them as a group. So let's talk a little bit about who. And first I'll speak a little bit about the role of the convener. And then we'll dig into who should be a part of group that you're convening. We're talking about the importance of finding those that can influence others, but we're also talking about making sure that you have included people who have lived experience or a more personal contact and connection with the issue you're working on. And lastly, we want to make sure that the work is inclusive of diverse representation and perspective. In a nutshell, the convener is the person whose job it is to call people together for a meeting of a committee, a group, a team. If you're in a large organization, you might have an administrator that acts as a convener in regard to programs, or sometimes a leader that will act as a convener of people across the organization to work on policies or practices together. In your community, you may have an organization that does a lot of this type of work, or acts as a facilitator for various groups. In the education world, There is increasingly more work being done through school and community approach. So you might have a convener that brings together representatives of schools and community stakeholders to work together on education needs and problems that have conditions rooted in the whole community, not just what happens during the school day. This type of convening can require a neutral approach. You're going to need a convener that can bring all different voices together and facilitate a conversation without pushing what they want to see happen. The convener does not have an agenda other than to help the group come to a consensus and to push that work forward. So, for example, if you're a schools leader and you want to pull together a committee to work on, let's say, literacy rates, and you bring together a group that's equal parts school participants and community participants, you may be considered an expert in the topic. And you'll bring that expertise to bear, but as the convener, you also have to facilitate the work of the whole and allow for the input of everyone to be weighted the same. For example, a community participant might not have your academic expertise, but they may be an expert in other things related to the problem, like family dynamics or poverty in your community, or they may have a great understanding of day-to-day life in the neighborhoods surrounding your schools. And so it's important to convene in a way that allows every voice and perspective to be heard, regardless of your personal position. And in those early stages of putting a group together, you probably already have an idea of some of the people you want at the table, right? That's not uncommon. But you don't know everybody. And one thing that it's important is to move outside your typical circles. We can't create solutions that benefit everyone if those solutions are created by a small, homogeneous group with similar backgrounds and perspectives. Start thinking about who might be outside your typical circle. And who are those centers of influence around this topic you need to address? Who comes up a lot in conversations around this topic? Who do others listen to and trust? Who has the ability to bring people together that you might not easily reach? So you might be seeking out not only people to be part of the group, but a couple of key influencers who can help you get the right group together to get started. And we need to think about making sure we include both content and context experts. What does that mean? A content expert is going to be someone who has expertise academically or professionally in the subject matter or issue that you're working on. So let's say we're convening a group to work on improving school attendance rates. A content expert might be someone at the school district who manages attendance data, or an administrator over attendance at the district. A context expert is going to be someone with lived experience or a closer on-the-ground understanding of the subject matter. So again, if we're talking about school attendance rates, this could be a student or a parent with their own perspective of a typical school day and what it takes to attend. It could be someone in the medical field with an understanding of how student and family health issues impact attendance, or a social worker that interacts with families on a regular basis. Let's talk a bit about equitable representation as well. Part of being equitable is about access and opportunity, and certainly making sure that context experts are included in your work towards your solution is a piece of that. And it's also about ensuring that the makeup of your team or your committee is representative of what your community looks like and includes voices of those who are impacted by this issue. And that you're intentionally including diverse perspectives and backgrounds and not just a group of like-minded folks who will rubber stamp an agenda. It's also about being willing to take the time to work to bring folks to the table that might not always be considered because it's not as easy to include them. That might mean looking at the timing of your meetings, where they're located, and how those kinds of barriers can impact the ability of some voices to be included and heard and valued. Now let's talk about how we want to convene and how can we be successful in this undertaking. We'll talk about the importance of a common agenda, establishing norms and building trust, and even how we sometimes have to revisit our purpose from time to time. This work isn't always as straightforward as it seems, so we'll talk about embracing that imperfection and the importance of having some facilitator tools in our pockets. We'll talk a little bit about what tasks we as the convener must take charge of, and lastly, a few tips on virtual meetings. Your group needs to understand their clear purpose. They must have a common agenda for their work. You may have given your participants an idea of why you're coming together when you invited them, but I do think it's important to make this something that you discuss and finalize with the full group when they begin working together. Hey, group, let's talk about and articulate what we're here to do, and even create a purpose statement that you can refer to. Not everyone is at the table for the same reason. Your participants care about the work, certainly, but some folks maybe also said yes because they want to add it to their LinkedIn profile, or maybe their organization is involved in this type of work and their boss told them to be at the meeting. This doesn't mean that they're not the right person, but this discussion about agreeing what we're here to do can be really essential in starting off on the right foot. And when we do sit down together, and we're going to do so regularly, we need to agree on some norms for our meetings. And there are plenty of examples of these out there. You can Google meeting norms and find options to choose from. On the screen are some examples of meeting norms that might help your group think more thoughtfully and intentionally about how they work together. We'll support each other by actively listening and staying engaged. We will ensure all viewpoints are heard and valued. We will leave agendas of individuals and organizations at the door. We'll start and end on time. We will share airtime. We will disagree with the idea, not the person. We'll ask for clarity when unfamiliar with a term or a reference. Again, these are just some examples. I do recommend that at your first or second gathering of your group that you take the time to adopt your norms and everyone has an opportunity to contribute and discuss. You might, as a convener, bring 3 or 4 to suggest, put them up on the whiteboard or on chart paper, and let the group suggest additions and come to an agreement on adopting your norms going forward. And I like to keep them available at each meeting, maybe hang them on the wall or print them on the agenda. Partnerships, collaborations, and collective impact really rely on trust among all parties. Are we working toward the common agenda or our own individual agendas? When the group comes to a meeting, we follow our norms that we've agreed on, we talk and we listen, we analyze and we make decisions together. And the only way we can be effective in all of that is trusting one another that we are here to truly work together. And that when we leave these meetings, we aren't going to go have that side meeting in the parking lot. Or we aren't going to simply take all these things we've heard and talked about and go start something on our own. Just in terms of keeping a group working well together and pushing forward as a convener, your ability to move mountains and make impact really depend on the level of trust you've built. And as the convener, you won't keep people at the table participating fully if you don't do what you say you're going to do. So always be mindful of your own action steps when leaving a meeting and make sure you're following up and being good steward of everyone's trust. And when things do maybe get off track, or we realize that maybe some members aren't being good stewards of others' trust and time, as a convener, you might need to return to that purpose statement or common agenda when things get a little tough. Teams and committees can get down the road in their work and get distracted by new ideas or other things that are happening and lose sight of what they originally intended to do. And you may even have a couple of people who want to steer the group over to working on something else that they weren't really brought together to do. Your leadership and ability to keep their purpose in front of them is important. Gentle reminders. Put on your facilitator hat and say, hey, let's talk about that suggestion from Susan and Tom. Do we feel that aligns with our stated purpose and the plans we've started? What does the group think we should do? And what you should know is that sometimes this work is messy and we have to embrace imperfection, and that's okay. Collaboration isn't always easy. There will be disagreements, like this picture with the leader throwing his hands up. It's a worthy struggle because there's a reason we're all at the table to work on this. Gaining consensus among a group of diverse individuals can be uncomfortable. Every meeting won't end with a pretty bow tied on it. But the trust you're building with each other allows the grace needed to understand we're all working toward a solution together and for the right reasons. It's worth it to struggle through and get it right. What is invaluable in pushing through the messy and uncomfortable is having facilitation skills. Seek out facilitation training and tools to strengthen your ability to have thoughtful, effective meetings and keep engagement. Put time into planning meetings. Don't just bring people together and say, okay, let's talk about fill in the blank and hope someone says something good or hope people even start talking. Incorporate activities that get everyone talking. Have some tricks up your sleeve for facilitating through disagreements, facilitating conversations that help the group move the work forward and create actions. We highly recommend Technology of Participation or TOP training, resources, and workshops. This is available from the Institute for Cultural Affairs. They have tools for helping build consensus among groups and an outline for facilitating what they call focused conversations that we use a lot. I also recommend the book Groups at Work by Laura Lipton. It's full of activities and exercises to use at different stages of your group's work. Or again, just browse the many facilitation resources out there. Activities for meetings, ways to keep conversation moving. Here's just a quick couple of tips. Don't create a lot of what we call sit and get meetings. There will always be times when you need to learn about something and you may have a speaker come in and share information or data with your group. But the bulk of your time should be working together, and I recommend getting people out of their seats when you can. Writing on a board or having them add their ideas and put them on sticky notes and put them on the wall. And then as the facilitator, read those out to the group to get feedback and get more discussion happening. Or break them into small groups of 2 or 3 members to talk about their thoughts on a topic and then bring the group back together to report out from each of the groups. It's simple, but it's very effective. It's a great way to help the group get to know each other better and keep building trust. Now, what should you expect to do as the convener to keep the work moving forward? This is certainly not an all-encompassing list, but these are a few things that you should keep in mind because it needs to be someone's job to get up every day and focus on this work. And if you're convener, that's you. Meeting logistics. Where will the meetings take place and when? Reserving the space. Making sure your space is accessible. Ensuring it's set up in such a way that it encourages working together, like not like a classroom, but more like tables facing each other so people can see each other as they're discussing things. Maybe you need to arrange for coffee or water or even a meal in some cases for the group. Communications. Do all of your participants know where the meeting is and when it is? Do they know any parking or other details they might need? Have you kept everyone informed on things related to the work since the last meeting? And in some cases, you may also need to handle communications about this work to the public. What is this group about? Why are they meeting? And why is this work so important? This type of communication can sometimes mean the difference between getting the resources you need when you need them or not. Putting the agenda together. Setting up the flow of the meeting. You may have a committee chair or co-chairs, and they may be able to take this on, but you'll want to be very involved as well in getting the agenda together and particularly getting it to the group. And especially if you're the facilitator for the meeting or portions of the meeting, you want to incorporate those ways to make sure the discussion moves forward or activities that you need to include in the agenda. You'll want to monitor any assigned actions or tasks between meetings. And I don't mean breathing down people's necks. I'm really talking about just keeping track of where you are in the process of the work. Are there tasks that need to be completed and who's responsible? And do they need your assistance? And just be ready to keep the group apprised of where things are as you continue to move forward. So before we end, I did want to share a few tips around virtual meetings. On the screen, you can see some norms that we've been using just for virtual meetings. So things like being fully present and minimizing distractions as much as possible. Listening and responding thoughtfully. Starting and ending on time, that's universal. Join by computer versus your phone if at all possible. Turn on your video to increase that human connection. And being patient with the technology. We're all learning together with this, aren't we? One thing I've definitely learned to do is call on people more intentionally than I would in an in-person meeting. For example, you may do introductions or an icebreaker activity at the beginning of the meeting, but in a virtual setting, it doesn't really work to say, okay, everybody take turns. The order you see everyone on your screen isn't always the order that they see everyone on their screen, so you can't go around the room like you typically would. Either no one goes or they all talk over each other. So I've gotten accustomed to telling people, I will call your name for your turn. Or you could also just type a list of names in the chat and let them go in that order as well. I'll also tell you that a lot of the facilitated activities that you might incorporate into an in-person meeting can also be done virtually. We use Zoom for our meetings, and you can use breakout rooms to put people in small groups and then bringing that together. And most virtual platforms have the ability to create polls during the meeting as well, so you can get an extra layer of interaction. We also ask people to use the chat feature if they want to ask for clarity about something that another participant has said, or just as a way to kind of raise your hand that you have something to contribute. It can be hard on a virtual meeting to see everyone's facial expressions or to realize that they want to talk. So having those extra options for requesting to speak are great. So that concludes my video about effective community convening, bringing people together to make that change that we couldn't do on our own. I hope you've learned a few things that you can use and that you've enjoyed this time together. Please reach out to us at Alignment USA if you'd like to learn more about bringing people together in your community or to learn about the AUSA network. If you're interested in an in-person or virtual training, visit us at nashvillehub.org, or you can contact me directly at heather@alignmentnashville.org. Thank you.